Everyone. I hope you are all well. I am hoping to take a few minutes now and again try to save you time and keep your focus and give a crash course in the halachos of Tisha B'Av. Now I want to just explain how I'm doing this. I'd like to break this up into two short shiurim. This shiur is going to focus just on the halachos of Tisha B'Av itself, eating and drinking and sitting on the floor, etc. And then I'm going to record another short shiur that's going to address specifically this year the various halachos and differences that apply because of the way that Tisha B'Av falls out, that it's on a Shabbos, pushed off until Sunday. So there's questions about when things happen and how we make Havdalah on Motzei Tisha B'Av and things like that. So I'm going to devote a separate shiur to that. But now I would just like to talk about the halachos of Tisha B'Av in general, basically, as they apply to any Tisha B'Av throughout the year. So now, as we mentioned in the other shiurim about the 3 weeks and the 9 days, the whole idea of this is that we are literally in Avelus, that we are literally spending the day focusing on our loss, the fact that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, the fact that Klal Yisrael is not where we are supposed to be, that every one of us is not where we are supposed to be. These are the ideas that how we can better ourselves, focusing on what we could do. These are the thoughts that we're supposed to be having on Tisha B'Av, like a real Avel who's supposed to be reflecting on a mourning person on what their loss is. So therefore, the halachos of the day are all catered towards keeping that focus, giving us a sense of Avelus, a sense of mourning, and keeping our focus, trying to keep us from being distracted, from enjoying ourselves and doing things that will distract us from what it is that we're supposed to be focusing on. So I'm just going to go through the basic halachos of what is prohibited, and when these prohibitions begin and when they end, etc., and how it works on Tisha B'Av. So we all know that Tisha B'Av includes no eating and drinking. A person is not allowed to eat or drink anything at all. This year, the way that's going to work is from sunset on Shabbos, meaning Shabbos afternoon. A person has shalashudas. Usually a person can eat shalashudas and it can continue. This year, by sunset already, a person has to stop eating and drinking. And throughout the fast, until the stars come out the following night, meaning Sunday night, and this year until a person hears Havdalah, a person is not allowed to eat or drink at all on Tisha B'Av, under normal circumstances. Now, if a person needs to take medication, so really a shaila should be asked on a case-by-case basis in terms of what a person could do or what they should do. But it happens to be that this year, because Tisha B'Av is pushed off from Shabbos to Sunday, the halachos are more lenient, and if anybody has any reason that they think that they should not be fasting, I know a person who was recently dehydrated and he got upset that he shouldn't fast, and a pregnant woman who was having difficulty also got upset she shouldn't fast at all, etc. So, the person should ask a shaila, and if on the fast itself, if a person is feeling sick, certainly if a person has like a terrible headache and is not feeling well, then they could break their fast even on a regular year. But because this year it's pushed off, even if a person is not terribly ill, but if a person is really feeling under the weather and really feeling sick and nauseous, not well, they can have a cup of coffee or drink and eat and do what they need to do. But otherwise, any drinking or eating is not permissible. And on Tisha B'Av, this includes rinsing out the mouth. On other fast days, rinsing out the mouth is permissible, and a person's even allowed to, according to many poskim, brush their teeth or use mouthwash and spit it out. But on Tisha B'Av, the poskim say that a person should not do so, and should not rinse out their mouth at all with anything. Okay, so that's one is eating and drinking. And again, if anyone has a shaila, they should ask it on a case-by-case basis. On Tisha B'Av, we don't wear shoes made of leather. This is a sign of mourning, that we're supposed to, feel the ground. We're supposed to, feel that we're doing, feel different. And therefore, the halacha is a person is not allowed to wear shoes of leather. This only applies to shoes. Other articles of clothing are permissible, belts or whatever a person can wear if they're made out of leather. And when it comes to shoes, there's an interesting thing. A lot of people wear Crocs, or most people. It's almost like the minute in line, so that people wear Crocs. It's an interesting thing. Some poskim are not for wearing Crocs on Tisha B'Av. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said like this, and I just this year saw a tshuva from Rasher Weiss, who lives here in the neighborhood, and they say that Crocs are very, very comfortable, and it's almost defeating the purpose. Those canvas shoes or slippers or water shoes or something, flip-flop, something that, if it's a nuah, something that, where you feel the ground, that's what the halacha is. So, Rav Weiss said that if a person has Crocs, that's what they have, and that's the only thing that they could use, and otherwise it's very difficult for them as they could wear them, but it's really preferable for a person to wear something that is a little bit, not as comfortable, where you feel the ground more. But okay, there's another halacha of Tisha B'Av. If a person has to go somewhere where there's non-Jewish people, or going to go somewhere where it's going to be uncomfortable for them to wear regular shoes, so they should really ask a question on a case-by-case basis. But again, this year, because it is pushed off, the halacha is more lenient in general. But that's a shaila a person should ask on an individual basis. Likewise, on Tisha B'Av, we are not allowed to wash right now during the 9 days. So there's a prohibition to wash for enjoyment, but if a person is very sweaty and not doesn't feel clean, so they're allowed to shower, but like we said, they have to make the shower cooler than usual and not use hot water and not enjoy it and just do the bare minimum. On Tisha B'Av, washing at all is prohibited. That means when a person wakes up in the morning, they're not allowed to splash water on their face. They're not allowed to even put water on their hands and then use that water and wash it on their face. Only if they wash their hands, which is also only permissible up until the knuckles. A person all day Tisha B'Av is only allowed to wash their hands up until the ends of their fingers. When they come out of the bathroom or when they wash Negelwasser in the morning. But even then, I have to flick off the water from my hands so much so that my hands are really not so wet anymore. And then with my hands barely damp, so damp that if I were to touch another place, that place wouldn't convey the wetness. It's called tofeach al manas la'atfiach. Okay, I don't want to get into it now, but basically once your fingers are not so damp, then you're allowed to rub them on your eyes or something like that, but otherwise you're not allowed to wash your face in any which way. On other years on Tisha B'Av, there's a way that you could prepare a towel in advance that will be very dry to that same degree, just a tiny bit damp. But this year, because it's Erev Shabbos, you don't really, the Shabbos is Tisha B'Av the day before, you don't really have that option. But if you were to have, let's say, a baby wipe or something that was, again, like I'm saying, barely damp, so damp that you wouldn't be able to wipe something and see the wetness over there, so then that you would be allowed to wipe, on your face or on your eyes. But that's the extent of it. Otherwise, a person is not allowed to wash. If a person's hands or any part of their body gets dirty, they're allowed to wash that part. If a person needs to wash children or wash dishes, they're allowed to do so. They're not mechuyev to wear gloves or anything like that. But again, a person has to, not enjoy putting their hands in the bath with their kid while they're bathing their child or anything along those lines. They're not allowed to enjoy, that, and other circumstances not allowed to wash at all. The poskim say, though, coming out of the bathroom or any time a person's, for davening or washing, certainly Negelwasser in the morning, then a person, washes, but again, only up until the knuckles, and they wash regular. In addition, just like on Yom Kippur, moving on from washing to the prohibition of sicha, of anointing, so there's a prohibition of putting on any type of perfume or any type of anointing oil or anything along those lines. And what this means is practically Allah Almighty for us nowadays. So first of all, perfume is prohibited. A person's not allowed to wear perfume on Tisha B'Av if they're allowed to under other circumstances. And deodorant is permissible. The poskim say, most poskim say, deodorant is permissible, since the idea is not to give a pleasant smell but to mask over an unpleasant smell. That's permissible. That's permissible to do. Women may not wear makeup or lipstick. And they may not wear Shabbos jewelry. The minhag is not to really wear any jewelry at all. And if it's the type of thing that a person never takes off, so then they're not mechuyev, they're not required la halacha to take it off. But the minhag is not to wear jewelry except the type of thing that a person never takes off at all. And Shabbos jewelry, a person you're not allowed to get dressed up. Again, certainly Shabbos clothing is not permissible, and the Shabbos jewelry is not permissible either. Okay. Also on Tisha B'Av, we sit like an avel. An avel sits low to the ground. It's a feeling of lowliness, a siman of avelus, a feeling of loss. That a person sits low on the ground. And again, also on Tisha B'Av, this is something that a person has to keep remembering throughout the day, and that keeps us focused, remembering the avelus, the idea of avelus throughout the day. So the halacha is a person has to sit on a lower stool, lower surface. This halacha only applies until chatzos, until the middle of the day of Tisha B'Av, until midday. From that point onwards, a person is allowed to get up and sit on a regular surface, and in fact they should from that point onward. The reason is just a side point, not a side point, but I don't want to get off on the hashkafa tangents, but the halacha shir. But the idea is that the Chazal say that because at that point of chatzos, Hashem, the fires began consuming the Beis HaMikdash, so that was an achama already for Klal Yisrael. That was a comfort for Klal Yisrael to see the Beis HaMikdash start to burn, because Hashem, it was, shafach hamasu al eitzim va'avanim, he poured out his wrath on the wood and on the stones, but that meant he was going to keep Klal Yisrael alive. In other words, Klal Yisrael feared maybe that Chas v'shalom Hashem was, ready to finish with us and, start over again with somebody, like with Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar, this type of thing. But once they saw that the Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed, so they saw that there was going to for sure be a continuity to Klal Yisrael, and therefore we appreciate that and get up midday. But otherwise, a person has to sit low. Now, as for how low a person has to sit, it's really, some poskim say different heights and different things. From what I understand, that the halacha is a person just has to sit something that's noticeably lower You don't need a ruler to measure, as long as it's something that's noticeably lower, or you're sitting on the floor or sitting on a pillow on the floor, something along those lines. For women, the post can point out they just have to be careful what type of skirt you're wearing, that it shouldn't be a lack of tznius, that it shouldn't be immodest when you're getting up or sitting down because you're sitting on a low surface that you're not used to sitting on. You just have to make sure that you're dressed appropriately. Likewise, if a person is in a situation where they have no choice but to sit, on a bus or in a car or something along those lines. So the poskim say if a person can stand on a bus, or Shlomo Zalman says, it's preferable, but if you need to sit, you could sit down, and it's not a problem that it's on a higher surface. Pregnant women or a person who's nursing does not need to sit on a low surface at all. Also, just be careful. The poskim say not to put svarim on the floor. Sometimes you're sitting on the floor and you have a sitter or a kinos or a eicha. You just have to be careful that you're not putting it on the floor because you're sitting down over there. Okay. In addition, there's an iser of she'elas shalom on Tisha B'av. Again, this is exactly modeled after an avil, a person who is sitting shiva for a loved one. There's a prohibition of saying hello, of saying shalom aleichem, of greeting a person, of even nodding your head and smiling in acknowledgement. This is one of the hardest halachos of the day, and for me, certainly, this is what keeps me focused the most. Every interaction that you have with every person, you have to be, remembering. No, this is not a day for schmoozing. This is not a day for chilling out with friends and saying hi and being chummy. And this is manjah halacha throughout the day. So a person has to be careful about this. You're not allowed to say hello to a person. You're not allowed to greet a person. When you answer the phone, you're supposed to say Moshe speaking, something like that. You're not supposed to say hello. If a person says hello to you, even if they say shalom aleichem, you're allowed to respond to them, but you should respond in a muted fashion, in like a toned down fashion. Again, we're supposed to be experiencing this avelus throughout the day. So I would assume that this applies nowadays to text messages and SMS and WhatsApp and emails, whatever it is. A person is not allowed to ask, and this applies throughout the day. It applies until Motzei Tisha B'av. Even Tisha B'av afternoon, Sunday afternoon, you're still not allowed to greet a person and say hello. You're allowed to say a mazel tov on Tisha B'av. Let's say you see a person who had a simcha recently and you haven't seen them, and now this is the first time you're seeing them. So again, you're not allowed to nod and say but you could say mazel tov. I heard about your simcha. You could probably smile. It's not a greet. They say because a mazel tov is a bracha. It's not a greeting. But that's the halacha. A person is not allowed to say hello. It's something you really have to try to remember. Not supposed to say good night to each other. You have husband and wife, and you go to sleep. Not supposed to say good night. These types of things. Okay, we do our best, and this keeps our mind on it all day. When it comes to sleeping, now that we mentioned it, so a person is required to do something different with the way that they sleep. Again, this does not apply to pregnant women or women after birth. But otherwise, a person has to try to do something different. If they sleep usually with two pillows, they should sleep with one pillow, or they should sleep on the floor, or without a pillow. They should sleep in some way that they're discomforted in their sleep. It's well known that the Satmar Rebbe, from the time of the World War II and onwards, he was saved during the war, but he never slept on a bed again. He slept on the floor for the rest of his life in Avelos for the people that we lost in the Holocaust. Sleeping on the floor, sleeping in an uncomfortable way. You feel it the whole night. You wake up in the morning and you feel it. That's how we're supposed to be. A person's not allowed to sleep in a comfortable, regular way. Similarly, for a husband and wife, people who are married, so marital relations are prohibited, and the minhag is to keep all harchakos. We keep all harchakos throughout Tisha B'av, certainly at night. Regarding Tisha B'av day, different poskim say different things regarding the rest of the harchakos, but relations are prohibited throughout Tisha B'av. And finally, the last thing is that on Tisha B'av, learning Torah is prohibited. The Torah is something that brings simcha to a person. It brings a person elevation of spirit. It brings a person a sense of happiness. And a person's not allowed to have that on Tisha B'av. Again, we're focusing on Avelos. And Avel is also not allowed to learn. The whole week of Avelos, a person's not allowed to learn, except those things that are permissible to learn, for an Avel, which are, let's say the halachos of Tisha B'av, the halachos of Avelos, as well as, many aspects of the Torah, many different parts of the Torah that contain in them, the sad pieces of the Torah, sad things that happen to Klal Yisrael, tragedies and sorrows, and things like that. But throughout the day, again, this is something that's very important, and I think this is also one of the most powerful aspects. A person is not supposed to be reading magazines and reading books and surfing the internet and doing things during this day that are distracting, where a person is supposed to be focusing on the tzaros of Klal Yisrael, on what we don't have, on how everything and everyone would be better if we had the Beis Hamikdash, on how the Holocaust and all the terrible tzaros that we had, in the meantime seem meaningless. But Mir Hashem is going to come together and it's going to make sense to us. But right now we don't have that, and it's a time to focus on this one day a year. to really focus on this. Any of my students have told you in the past, I'm a fan of YouTube videos. There's tons of YouTube Holocaust documentaries and interviews with Holocaust survivors that are available on YouTube. Last year, I recorded a whole series of also brief shiurim. Maybe I'll share the playlist here in the description. Like a whole Tisha B'Av, I learned through a whole section of the Gemara that talks about the Korban Bayis and a lot of the stories there with some explanations. Maybe I'll share that. That's the type of thing that a person is allowed to learn and listen to on Tisha B'Av. But again, we're supposed to be focusing on these types of things. If we're getting together with friends, we're not supposed to socialize and relax with each other. But we're supposed to be focusing on these things. I even asked somebody, those books like Vistas of Challenge and those types of books which have all these terrible stories. So you're not allowed to even read the resolutions, the happy resolutions. If you're reading a Holocaust book, you're not supposed to read about the times of the salvation. It's really supposed to be a day of focusing on the how broken Klal Yisrael are, and Mirz Hashem, that we should want to get out of it enough that Hashem, even before this video uploads, Mashiach should be here and should take us out of this mess and bring us home. Okay, Mirz Hashem, I will record another shir about specifically the halachos of Tisha B'Av this year, how they work out with Shabbos.